So we're going to start every kingdom with general characteristics. So what are the general characteristics of the kingdom Protista or Protist?
They're mostly heterotroph.
They are heterotroph.
Oh, unicellular.
Unicellular, mostly. When we see them, there can be some multicellular, but most protists are unicellular and they live in colonies. Yes. Autotroph and heterotroph. So they feed both ways. They make their own food and they consume. Yes. They can move. Now, some can't. Remember we said we're going to get into so let's change this to mostly motile, right? Because some protists actually cannot move. I'll show you some examples of that. What else? Eukaryotes. From here on out, the rest of the school year until the final exam, we're on eukaryotes. No more prokaryotes. Because who are my only prokaryotes? Bacteria. Good job. So there's 3 groups of protists. I promise you this picture for real. This drop of water, you're going to see all of that happening in a microscope. So you should know what these 3 types of protists are. Good. Protozoa. What are protozoans like? Good. We call them animal-like protists because how do they feed? How do animals feed? They're heterotrophic. They cannot make their own food. If you don't remember that heterotrophic means cannot make your own food, please write that. What's another group of protists, Carlos?
Like fungus.
Fungus-like. Do you know what they're called? Good. They're called slime molds. And remember to put that word in front because when you hear the word mold, that visual mold you're used to seeing, well, hopefully not, but you may see, is not part of the protist kingdom. It's part of the fungi kingdom. But slime molds, which look like fungus and act like fungus because they absorb food through their cell walls. So fungus-like protists means they're protists that act like fungus, but they're not fungus because they're what? They're motile. Some are not, but this one in particular is actually not, but some are. And what's the main difference between protists and fungi? Single-celled. And fungi are multicellular. Good. So my slime mold is a single-celled fungus. Some can be multicellular. Yes. The next one is plant-like protists. What do we call that group? Algae. And they do what? They make their own food. They're autotrophs. And if you don't remember the definition of autotrophs, it's they make their own food. Now, fungus would be auto or hetero? Hetero. So if you don't know that either, please write that. Any organism that absorbs its food means it's consuming, so it's heterotrophic. If we're lucky, we'll see this. So we're going to talk about movement and feeding patterns of protists. And it's all really basically due to 3 structures. This particular structure that you see being whipped out of the front of that protist is called what? Flagella. What is that?
Oh, it's the things that help them
Good job. They help protists move, and it's a projection that kind of sticks out that looks like a whip or a tail. So whip-like or tail-like is a flagella, and zooflagellates, which this particular organism means there's many flagella. So some organisms have 1 tail, some have many, and then they're considered zooflagellates. My second structure, anybody know what this is? It's right here. Cilia. What does cilia look like? Little hairs. They're little hairs as opposed to long like tails or whips. And they allow for movement and feeding. They, as you could see there, they're literally taking in particles. You can even see it going through their cell, which is pretty cool. So this last one, did anybody go over feeding and movement? You did, right? Does anybody know of a structure that I didn't mention it's going to be, what's happening here? What is this? Shh. What is this? It's a protist. You don't have to know what protist it is. What is a protist made up of? One cell. What's all over a cell that holds it together and makes it have structure? Yes, cytoplasm. Really what's happening here is this protist has extensions of cytoplasm or the cell membrane that's going to warp, because it's kind of warping, and allow it to move and feed. And that is called pseudopodia. So it's not really a part, it's more like a process, right? So it's different from cilia and flagella, because it's almost explaining like extensions of cytoplasm. So it's part of the cytoplasm that allows it to warp its shape in order to move around and feed. So protists reproduce how?
Asexual and sexual.
Good. They reproduce both ways, asexual and sexual. If they reproduce, and I did this backwards. So let's swap these. If they reproduce asexually, it's like what? When you have one cell divides into two identical daughter cells, what do we call that? Mitosis. Good job, guys. Sexual reproduction is like meiosis when it comes to protists, because it's a cellular reproduction. So it's similar to meiosis because you have the production of cells that are considered sex cells that then combine to form a new organism.